It's by truckers for truckers. This is the Channel 19 experience. Let's hit the road.
All right, villains, we're kicking off our series around one of the most contentious topics in trucking, the driver shortage. We're going to examine the topic from a variety of angles. There's a lot of opinions and perspectives to consider on this topic, and each perspective has its truths and also its blind spots. And we'll work through that together in the series. And first up, I'm welcoming back Mike Ritzema of Superior Trucking Payroll Service. Mike, welcome back to the show. Before we dive in, why don't you give a little refresher on your background and then we can dive right into the driver shortage conversation.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Tony. Yeah, I am the founder of Superior Trucking Payroll Service. We are a payroll service that is just set up to help trucking companies. We don't do bakeries and doctors' offices and things. All we do is trucking. And so we've been doing it for 15 years.
Yeah, and your background before
Oh yeah,
starting this company?
I was the CFO of a trucking company that had about 80 trucks and a brokerage. And that's what got me interested in the first place. We had used a national payroll provider who kept messing something up. And so I told the owner I could write software better than that. And he said, go ahead. And so I did. And then years later, I went off on my own and, saw there was a market for this. And I love helping trucking companies. So I'm so glad I can be on and share whatever I can share with you.
Yeah, for sure. Great to have you back. So, yeah, if you've been around the business for a while, it's not the first time you've heard the term driver shortage, right? You stick around for a little while and you're going to hear that pop up one way or another. Um, the from your perspective, right, since you've seen a long track record of driver payroll, talk a little bit about kind of what you've seen over the years and also recent trends around driver pay.
Well, the fact of the matter is, much like rates, other than fuel surcharge, haven't really moved in years. There's a little bump around COVID, but they're not even adjusting inflation like actual dollars. They just don't move. Driver pay does a lot of the same thing. And so drivers just aren't getting paid more. I mean, you can't get blood out of a turnip. If there's only, 4,000 in the load, you can't pay the driver 3,000 or something or anything like that. You've got equipment and fuel and insurance and all the other fun things to deal with. So that's usually how it works, especially with small trucking companies. They're like, I just don't have it. What we've seen recently is the consumer price index, the CPI, kind of the measure for inflation for consumers, since the first of 2023 is up 10% in total, not per year, just over the 2.5 years is up 10%. But driver wage from the driver pay index that we send out every month is down 6%. So compared to the beginning of 23, which is already post-COVID, we're already into the slump. We're 9 months into the slump that seems to never end. So the wages were already coming down and things like that. But the drivers are making less and their costs are going up. And so why anybody would want to drive should never be for money, because they're just not going to get it.
Yeah. Yeah, unless it's something very specialized that you can warrant, rates that increase and keep up with inflation. It's very hard as just a commoditized dry van reefer carrier doing what, thousands, hundreds of thousands of other drivers are doing. It's very hard to be an outlier on the pay side.
It's unfortunate because they get treated like unskilled labor, really. They get the server at Applebee's makes more than they do if you count in tips. And that's just not right. I mean, that's skilled labor. And if you don't think it's skilled labor, try and back a truck up into a dock with trailers on both sides. I won't even try it because I couldn't even do it in a video game. So, right, like it's a skill,
Yeah.
knowing that your truck doesn't sound right when it's going through the prairie and you're in the middle of nowhere and you got to try and limp it to the truck stop. That's a skill. To me, this is like a plumber or an electrician or somebody like that. Truck driving is skilled labor, should be treated as such.
Yeah. And when you look at things like, I love the post that all the carriers do celebrating the 1,000,000 miles, the 3 million miles. I mean, I've seen 5 and 6 million miles, which just blows your mind. Like 5 or 6 million miles with the lunatics on the highway to not have an accident. Like I didn't make it 1 million miles. I had a couple small incidents, one backing incident to your point. And the other one, I smoked a 2,000 pound cow. out in the open range territory in Montana. I dodged the white cow at night. That one my headlights picked up, but the black cow I missed, and I caught that one broadside. So, but I mean, just thinking about the skill that it takes to go millions of miles.
Mhm.
I mean, most drivers on a daily basis, there's multiple things where the skill played a part in somebody making it home to their family that day, right?
Yeah, not just the driver, but the cars around him or the cows around him, or right,
Yeah.
or the shipment getting there on time and undamaged. I mean, there's so much going on, and then you got reefer. You got to make sure that the chute doesn't get moved, and so you end up cooking part of your load or something. Like there's all that. It's not just holding a steering wheel. It's not like me driving home tonight in my Honda Pilot. Not quite the same as trucking.
Yeah. And not to mention, there's an army of attorneys standing around waiting for your mistake.
They make me crazy. That's a whole other episode, man. But I would do it. It makes me crazy.
Yeah. So, I mean, with your payroll service, right? You're
Mhm.
seeing a lot of drivers come and go, right? And you've
Yes.
got different kinds of fleets. And I mean, so what sort of things do you see on the the churn or the retention side from the fleets that you're working with, and how does it feel like a shortage to them?
It's First of all, it's not a shortage, but that's okay. I understand that you got to call it that. And the reason it's not a shortage is if there was a shortage of drivers, there would be loads not getting hauled. And if there were loads not getting hauled, the rates would be much higher.
Right.
So the reason the rates are low is because there's more trucks than there are loads. And all those, we don't running that many autonomous trucks just yet. So they're all driver trucks. But there is a good driver shortage, and I agree with that. But back to your question, like, what do I see for my clients? It's interesting to me because some of these clients have really low turnover, and some have, the 100% would be a goal for them, right? Like they'd be like, yeah, they'd be high fiving each other. We only turned over 100% of our trucks this year, and so I mean, but I've got a client who's been with me for almost all of the 15 years that I've been doing this. His turnover rate has to be 10% a year.
Wow.
I mean, and it's amazing. And I've asked him about it too. The thing that he says is, I'm very, very particular about who I hire. And so he's not going to suffer the minimum acceptable driver, which I think a lot of people do because they're so focused on getting that load moved. They're like, oh, if their MBR has just a few enough points and the insurance company will let me insure them, and that's the standard I'm going to use and just ship him out.
Yep.
But in your gut, in your soul, if you're hiring drivers, this woman is a bad hire. I know something's going to go sideways here. So what is it going to be and when is it going to get me? Um, and you know it, but you got to get that load moved. And so it takes it's a lot of courage to have to say, no, I'm only going to hire good drivers.
Yeah, and there's an increasing expense when you just leave a truck parked against the fence because you said no to that driver. You're like, no, I'm just not going to deal with whatever the resulting headache is from deviating from what I know is a good driver and lowering that standard.
There absolutely is. There's the cost of the truck. You're still insuring it. You've got all these other expenses. You still actually kind of have to maintain it.
Yeah, base plate
And
sitting on it,
finding a new
right?
driver, costs money. So if you can do it quicker, it's theoretically going to cost you less money if you just can hire the first one. But you're just going to keep hiring that first one, twice a year for that truck because if you're hiring bad drivers. And the good drivers, we all know who the good drivers are within your fleet. If I had a load that had to move and I needed to impress the shipper and the receiver and the weigh station and everybody in between. Most companies that have even 5 drivers have one. They're like, yeah, that's the one I'd pick. You want more like that one, right? And they want to work with people like them. So it's just so crazy that we're not good at separating who are the good drivers from who are not the good drivers. And I'm sorry, I'm kind of going off on a rabbit trail on you, but it's so
No,
important.
yeah. Well, I think you made some really good points in there, right? I'll agree with you that there is no driver shortage, and as I would agree with your premise too. Like, if there was truly a shortage, you would see wild price spikes, right? That's your first indication there's an actual shortage, right? The other reason I would say there's a good driver shortage, I would contest that even as a root cause because there are plenty of people with CDLs who are very good truck drivers. And I'll raise my hand. I'm not a great truck driver. I was a very good truck driver. I was very safe. I mean, one cow aside, that cow would probably beg to differ. But that are not participating in the game, right? Because the rate isn't the pay rate, either as an owner operator or as a company driver, isn't conducive enough to lure me back into doing that job for that pay. And it's not just the pay and the job, it's what comes with the job, right? The the experience, the lifestyle, the other parts that are challenging, the risk, right? The upside risk of, holy cow, I could get put in jail. I could get sued out of business. I could have someone come after my livelihood, my home, all kinds of things as a result of my job, which most of us, we go to work every day without that threat of, which button on my laptop could I press today to find myself, you know, in prison getting sued. I mean, there are buttons there. Let's not be naive and say that there
Right.
aren't, but they're a more clear choice, right? Of what would get you in trouble at your, normal office job, than is on the road, right? Um,
Yeah, I mean, if your office was rolling 80,000 pounds at 60 miles an hour, then we're closer to the same thing. But my office
yeah.
is very stationary and not that heavy. So
Yeah, and there's not thousands of interactions with random
yeah,
people
there's
with varying
right.
skill
Yeah,
levels.
people, and there's no one standing in front of my office moving at 60 miles an hour to jump in front of or rear end me or something to try and make it look like I mean, it was my fault. And I mean, there are bad actors everywhere in every industry, but yeah, trucking seems to find them. And so, like the people that are trying to make a quick buck are more likely to go after trucking. We were talking about all the trucking attorney ads. I'm sure that it saturate daytime television. Uh,
Right.
injured.
Yeah, and the
We'll get the
billboards.
most money for your trucking claim. We see those all the time, and they make me crazy.
Yep. Yeah, well, I mean, you were we were talking a little bit earlier before we got started about kind of an interesting way you phrased it, right? Which is the dilemma that the trucking companies face, right? And how they're managing through that dilemma of being squeezed on one side with their rates and what to do about that pressure, from all the other options that they may or may not have. And so, I mean, like, what do you see as some of the tactics that your payroll gets a view into, right? Because you get to see, hey,
hmm
there went another $6,000 bonus out in this person's payroll, but oh, here
hmm
that person also quit at the 5 month mark, things like that.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's some companies that pay sign-on bonuses, which I think is just a horrible idea. Uh, I think the driver that already works for you is more important than the driver that you might hire. Again, especially if you have a standard of good drivers, which you should have a standard of good drivers, even though that's really hard. And I can go into that more later if you want. But I would, if you're going to do bonuses, do retention bonuses, do anniversary bonuses. Give them $100 for each year they've been there. So driver after a year gets $100, after 2 years gets $200, after 3 years gets $300. You're not into any real money for 10 years. And by then, if you could keep a driver for 10 years, you'd happily give them $1,000.
Right.
Right. So that's the main thing. But because I see signing bonuses. That was what the ATA had talked about a couple of years ago. When they were talking about the driver shortage. They put something on the ATA website, but no one signed it. I kind of laughed at that. And they were talking about $15,000 signing bonuses for owner operators. And like, no owner operators getting that. They'd get it the first day and they'd quit and they go to the next guy. Shoot, I can't drive a truck at all, but I can fake it enough to get $15,000. For 5 minutes, I can do it. As long as they don't road test me, I think I'm fine. And yeah, because the road test wouldn't go well. But just the idea of that was that myth. And so there is kind of a myth that the drivers are getting over, the 15 they see, or you'll see companies that advertise $2,500 signing bonus, but they're paying it like every month for a year or two. So they're
Mhm.
paying it $100 to $200 a month. So it's not really a signing bonus. It still is a retention bonus, but just call it that. Like it's you're yeah, you don't the person that's gonna come to you for a signing bonus is gonna leave you for somebody else's signing bonus.
Yeah, and you see, like, there's all these tactics from just carnival barker sales pitches, right? And it coming from all parts of the industry, right?
Mhm.
Whether it's the CDL schools, I mean, you see it on social media, and it doesn't matter. I mean, you see it for dispatchers too, like, oh, you can get rich and earn seven figures if you just start your own dispatching company, and if you buy my 59.99 e-package of documents and templates, you'll be on your way to vast wealth, right? Same thing on the truck driving side, right? You just see whether it's the schools trying to get people into the career, whether you see it on the recruiting side from the trucking companies, like there's just this wide gap between the perspective of what the job's going to pay and what it's going to be like to then the reality. And I think that plays into, the person, the company you work with that's successful at this.
Mhm.
He knows what he wants. And I bet like he doesn't see any up value in BSing someone into taking that job, right?
I will tell you, he doesn't see any up value in BSing anybody about anything,
Right.
which is great. I think that's the way to go. Be clear in your expectations. This is what we're going to expect from our drivers, and we're not kidding. Does this sound like something you can do?
Yeah. And
And if
here's
they're
what
like,
you can expect from us, and
yes,
we don't plan on not delivering it.
exactly. This is what we're gonna ask of you, and this is what we're going to do for you, and that is the trade, and the trade is not negotiable. So if it sounds like that's not your jam, he has mostly flatbeds. So, if load securement's going to be an issue for you, then we're not the people for you.
Yeah.
And that,
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's one of the most powerful things you can do as a trucking company is say, here's the drivers that are not good fits for us. The drivers that want to run wherever, hauling whatever trailer, hauling whatever, driving whatever make of, if you only have Kenworths, and I don't know what he has, but let's just say all we have is Kenworths. If you don't like Kenworths, we're not your people.
Yeah.
What that's going to do too is the people that like Kenworths, they're going to look at it and go, this is the place I should go look at. So you can't know who you're for until you know who you're not for.
Yeah.
And so that helps you make better hires. And you just have your standards. I like to call them boundaries. And the boundaries are non-negotiable. And again, I make up boundaries. I was in the finance side of the accounting or of the trucking company. I didn't hire drivers. I will acknowledge all of that, but I do hire employees here and we have boundaries and they're non-negotiable. And so I don't care how good you are at driving the truck. If you are gonna not be dressed well enough to my standard, whatever I decide my standard is, you can't work here. If you're gonna forget to bring your steel toe boots because you got to go on somewhere that requires that, you're not gonna work here. And that's okay. You'll be good for somebody else. But
Yeah.
I got to be willing to let that truck sit. And even though it does cost money, it's going to cost you now or it'll cost you later, as you were saying, right? Earlier, pay now or pay later.
Yeah.
So it's a lot easier if you just make the good hire now. It's harder in the beginning, but it pays off. Your headaches, drop by 80%. And I'm sure too, if you talk to any small trucking company, mid-sized trucking company, and you said to them, okay, however many drivers you have, are 20% of them knuckleheads? And they'd go at least. Like, what are they doing here? They're just making you look bad. So, but they do it because they're like, those are the guys who applied. And they're kind of like, they just like fate brought them to them instead
Right.
of demanding more, which none of this is to dump on the drivers. The drivers they're getting away with what they're doing and they're getting, if you're not going to tell them it's not okay, they should keep doing it. And they still don't get paid enough, which is, I know what we're really talking about. Even a bad driver needs more of a living wage because it's just not happening right now. And I don't see it getting better until we have the next boom, which hopefully will be soon.
Yeah. And what we've seen is as the everybody gets squeezed, right? The dilemma that the trucking company faces, I was on the shipper side. I faced the dilemma from that side, right? The pressure of, and you were on the brokerage side, or you saw the brokerage side,
Mhm.
right? Where, if the money coming in keeps shrinking, you got to find ways to shrink the money going out, or you're not going to be in business forever, or for long.
Mhm.
And so, you watch the corners get cut every which way, and you wait. Oftentimes you wait till it bites you, right? This is where the pay now or pay later, you say, well, I have to write out a paycheck now. I can shrink that now and I'll pay later. Hopefully not. I'll take the gamble that I don't have to pay later because my cheaper alternative crashed that truck or quit, at a truck stop in Iowa, 500 miles from the delivery with no
Mhm.
time left to recover it. I mean, all those problems you just hope don't occur. But we know like trucking's a matter of probabilities. We run in big numbers, right? Revenue side's big, mileage side's big. The averages are going to catch up with you when you cut corners.
Yeah, to me, the way I think about it too is, okay, if you're cutting corners, like trying to use a lesser driver you could pay less, then you're trying to get lucky with that driver. Ask
Hmm.
yourself this: how lucky have you been? Right now, you're getting garbage rates, right? You got everybody on you because you're trying to keep the thing going. Have you been lucky so far? Why do you think it's going to change by hiring that driver? I mean,
Yeah.
something. Yeah, your luck has to turn at some point, and I want it to, but yeah, you just better drivers are are always going to pay off, and they're always worth more. What we were talking about before too is it's hard to quantify what makes a better driver though.
Hmm.
And so I'd love to be able to tell people what that is, but what's a better driver for trucking company A is not the same as trucking company B. And
Yeah, for
so you
sure.
need to know for your own trucking company, what's a good driver? Is it like some companies are not going to care at all what the drivers are dressed like. They're like, all I want to know is that you're going to be able to run to the max of your logs, and you're going to run every time I want you to run, or so whatever their thing is. And that's fine. It should be their thing. It's not intended to be universal. But I think for trucking companies, like if you want to lower your turnover, because this turnover does cost, it's like 7,500 bucks a turn. I think it's the studies I've seen, something
Yeah,
like
it
that.
varies kind of
Yeah,
in that
it moves
75
around, but
to
what you count into it.
12,000. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you
Depends
see
on
them.
who's trying to sell you what.
Depends on exactly. But yeah, if you know what drivers you want, you can just go get those drivers and cut your turnover and make your life easier.
Yeah, and just talking about like what is the realistic expectation, you know? You see all the ads are targeted towards well, you can make up to $100,000.
Mhm.
Okay, what's your average? Right? What's your middle, because is there any reason to believe that this person's going to be your top driver because they just walked in? How many of the people in your top 10% just got here last year, you
Right.
know?
Yeah. Ask them. Yeah. Go in. Yeah. If you're a truck driver, say, and they tell you you're going to make 100 grand, say, that sounds fantastic. Can I get it in writing? Number one, which they'll be like, oh, well, you never know what's going to happen. Yeah. That's what I thought. Number two is show me the pay stubs of a guy who started a year ago, a driver who started a year ago. I don't need to see their name or their address. Show me the pay stubs and let's add them up. Did they get to 100,000?
Yep.
And maybe they do. Again, if you're hauling hazmat or you're hauling double drops and non expedited freight, you might get there. But
Yeah.
that's the exception. That's not nearly the rule.
Yeah, and I think, part of it, like this is human nature, and this is not just related to truck drivers. Um, but there's also plenty of sentiment of that like I'm the exception. I'm the exceptional
Mhm.
driver. If there's going to be anybody who's in the top 10%, it's going to be me. And I think you see a lot of that, which is like, well, do you do the things that the exceptional drivers do?
Mhm.
Do you actually want to hump 3,000, 3,500 miles a week, or are you more of the 2,200 mile a week kind of guy? Like, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? There's
No.
there's companies that's a perfect fit for. There's room for that in this business. Not everybody needs to hump 4,000 miles a week,
Right.
or every week, because that's probably not sustainable either. I'll raise my hand at that. I did it, and then I ran out of steam. I just got sick and tired of it. Um,
Mhm.
Sounded great,
Mhm.
but was unsustainable.
Well,
Um,
I mean, even car drivers, more than half of them will tell you they're above average car drivers.
oh
So
yeah.
why would truck drivers be any different on that? Like yeah, they're all going to say they're above average. So we just got to you got to define what above average is. And
Yeah, I
so
mean
in truck,
that's
I don't,
funny
yeah,
you mentioned that, right? Like I I'd mentioned a survey a while back that I think it was maybe Overdrive magazine or somebody had done, which was like, well, 73% of car drivers said that they would be willing to go be truck drivers if the pay was right. And I'm
no,
just
they
like,
wouldn't.
right, like what a delusional statistic.
73% of the people that applied at a trucking company to be drivers said they would be truck drivers if the pay was right. Maybe.
Right.
Come on.
Yeah.
That's
But I mean
man. Yeah,
that
they don't understand either too. That question had to be asked in such a twisted way.
yeah. Yeah, and but I mean that's kind of the a delusional part of all of us to some degree, right? Of, okay, yeah. Am I capable of it? Maybe on my best days, and if I could repeat it. Do I have the enthusiasm and the drive to actually do that day after day after day? Maybe not, right?
Mm-mm,
And
not
that's
me.
okay, right?
Yep.
Yeah, you know,
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. That's on
and
my
does
best
that mean
day.
staying out 30 weekends a year and not seeing my family? Okay, yeah.
And
And then
missing
what's
holidays and birthdays and little league and band concerts and all that stuff because that load's got to move.
And I think that's one of the challenges for truck drivers in this whole air quotes driver shortage discussion, which is like, you see a lot of social media posts of people saying, well, when I add up all the hours that I'm either working and don't get paid because I'm getting paid by the mile, and that doesn't include sitting at shippers and receivers, or when you
Hmm.
think about the time away from home, like there's these external costs to being a truck driver that don't feel like they're appropriately compensated for, which, yes, we can agree that that's true. The challenge is would anybody compensate you for that, right?
Yeah, the only way you're ever going to get that really is if all the trucking companies unionized again, if they
Yeah.
collectively bargained. It's really the only way it's ever going to happen. And I'm not pro or anti-union. I'm just saying that you can't get. There's so many trucking companies, the small trucking companies and medium size, and even the large ones. There's just so many trucking companies that they can all kind of dictate rates and things like that and tell you what it is, but the driver doesn't have as much leverage other than to go to somebody else who's going to give them the same bad deal. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, it's hard. You've got to be a truck driver, you got to want it. You got to want to do that. And you got to be like, you know what? I heard them called the last cowboys, driving the
Mhm.
herd across the West. Like you got to want to do that. And you got to think, no, I could never sit in an office. I could never sit in a manufacturing plant. I could never work in a restaurant.
Yeah, and I think that's a very good point to balance out the equation, right? Because yes, you want to, all of us have probably stared at various situations. For me, the last 10 years has been sitting at an airport watching a flight get canceled, spending another night in Houston because, a hurricane's coming and going, well, no one's going to pay me extra, but here I am. And that's a reality of a lot of jobs. Same with, oh, it's a snowstorm in Michigan and my commute's now 2 hours to and fro. Well, that's the price of living in Michigan.
Yep.
Um, and but we tend to not balance out too in the equation the fact that yeah, I do get a different view in my office every single day. I do, when it comes to defending, like, why am I a truck driver? That seems ridiculous. Then you hear those arguments come out. They tend to get forgotten when somebody's doing oh, woe is me, the pay sucks. Yeah, but you made a trade-off, right? And that can be a tough pill to swallow. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it's easy, but you have to remember that too in the moment. Like you did avoid having to hang out with John at the water cooler because there's no water cooler in your truck and there's no John.
Your boss will not knock on your office door. There's just no way. You're going 60 miles an hour at least. They can't knock on that door. They can call you, but that's
Yeah.
it. Like they are, yeah, you're not going to have that. You get more autonomy than you would get in almost any other job at that level because you just got to get, from Grand Rapids where I am to Los Angeles and you deliver, what's today, Wednesday, you deliver on Saturday. So you just got to get there.
Yeah.
And so you within the laws, logs and things like that, but you do have some flexibility in when you take your time off and things like that and what you want to do. So and you don't have anybody hounding you as long as you make your deliveries. You get to feel like, there is some honor in the profession, much like
Sure.
the Cowboys, where this isn't a job anybody could do. So you can be that person who, look, I was bringing medicine. We've got some medicine manufacturers in our area. I brought medicine out to California. People in California are able to feel better health wise because of my work.
Yeah.
And I think that's great.
One thing I was talking to a software friend of mine, and he had
Mhm.
worked for one of the large mega carriers for a long time as the chief technology officer. And at one point, they had revamped their entire payroll system. And one of the interesting things, of course, to understand what the new payroll system should actually be able to do, they had to run through a bunch of data and understand, like, okay, which features are we actually using? Which ones are, from a 1950s law that no longer apply or whatever the case might be. And he said one of the more interesting things he found in the data was like all the garnishments, all the child support, all the tax liens, like all these various things. And when he kind of did a comparison of like my office staff, because they were on the same payroll system, and his
Hmm.
driving staff, he was just like overwhelmed with kind of melancholy as he looked at kind of the how the data diverged, right, between the two populations of drivers versus non-drivers, and kind of you could infer some of the carnage of trucking as a occupation does.
Yeah, I agree. There are more, we call them third party payments, payments not to the employee
Hmm.
in truck drivers than there are in anything else I've ever seen. I think part of it is, to me, it's like the child support things is it's hard to leave your wife or significant other at home. Like that's just a stress on your relationship. And some
Yeah.
of they figure it out. Most of the trucking spouses figure it out. A lot of them do at least. And it gets hard to actually when the driver's home.
Yeah.
Right.
My wife
It's
would attest to that.
okay,
Yeah.
right? Like we developed a rhythm without you being here. Why don't you need to go on the road, do something.
Yep.
And so there's that. And then it's just hard. And then if your relationship ends, that leads to the child supports, which are by far the most of what we get. My record, I think, is 10 orders on with 8 baby mamas.
That's
Yeah.
like NFL level.
Right. Yeah, that really, right? That's professional athlete level. And so, and they all end up getting a very small piece of it, but they'll get it until they actually fulfill the whole order, which they could be paying until the kid's 40.
Oh, wow. I didn't
Yeah,
know
because
that.
yeah, it's like so much a week until they're 18, usually about. I'm not an attorney, but
Oh, so you have to pay it, basically pay
yeah,
it back.
yeah. So, but you can only take half of their check or 60% of their net pay, basically. So if the order was $100 a week and you can only pay 20 because you've got multiple orders, and so we gotta, instead of you paying up to half or 60%, we gotta split that among everybody. So you're supposed to pay 100 and you're only paying 20. That other 80 doesn't go away. You
Mm,
just got to pay that on the back end.
wow.
And so yeah, it's hard. And I mean it's hard to be a parent enough as a truck driver. Like I don't understand how it's you've got to be so dialed into your kids, and everybody's got to understand what's going on. But then you talk about other things too, like bankruptcies or tax liens and things like that. That's just not being strategic. Or it's, that you talked yourself into making a bad purchase. Because there's no one that's going to advocate for the driver, unfortunately. Now, I don't want to paint with a broad brush. Drivers, again, generally don't think about later. It's why those tobacco usage rate is so high and the hypertension's so high. Besides it being a job where you sit there most of the day, you're not just sitting there, but you're sitting and you're not able to walk around. It's easy to make bad decisions. So it's easy to get financed for that Harley you shouldn't have bought, and
Yeah.
then they sue you, and then you got a garnishment or the bankruptcy because you end up buying a Harley and you had 2 other credit cards and you get forced into bankruptcy, and then we're paying trustees and things like that. And again, it would be easy to try and find joy. And I'm not a sociologist or anything like that, but you're trying to find some joy in a very lonely job. So
Yeah.
you're going to do it by buying a Harley or go, seeking companionship, I'll call it, which results in a child support,
Yeah.
things like that. Um, yeah. And to be fair to the trucking companies on this, I think they would offer what I would call life skill coaching to their drivers, especially the big carriers. They would offer that, but I don't think the drivers would do it.
Yeah.
So it doesn't make it less hard. It's still very hard. And or it's a comparison game too. You're going through the truck stop and you see the other guy just bought his Harley, and and so on and so on, and you want to keep up with the Joneses. Well, how come they have a Harley and I don't? Which again isn't unique to trucking, but it's still hard. And so
Well,
then
even
you're,
social media and technology
oh my
have
gosh.
fostered that even more. Like before, you didn't even really see it. Like when I started driving in the 90s, like you were just gone. You didn't know what anybody was doing in town or what they bought. So there was no comparative, what are the Joneses,
Hmm.
doing, until you got home, right? And then you look around and go, but then you'd say, well, yeah, but you also never left that 2-mile stretch of pavement between your house and, your job. I've been, to 37 states or whatever the case might be, right? Like,
Mhm.
I'm banking experiences, you're banking payments, right?
Yeah, and you got to work so hard to pay for that Harley, you're never gonna have time to drive it.
Yeah.
And you also, okay, so you see the guy with the Harley or whatever, and then you're on the road for 6 hours, 6 more hours for the day. And that's, you're just stewing on it. You're not talking necessarily to anyone. If I was here at work and something happened that got me spiraling on something, I go home and my wife would be like, get your head on straight. What are you thinking? And they don't have that person right that they see every night. And
Yeah.
so it's easier to spiral. And like you said, social media is so powerful like that too. Ugh.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I don't think a lot of these things are unique to truck drivers. They just happen to manifest themselves a little bit differently, right? In the data, in the patterns, things like that.
Mhm.
Um, one question I wanted to ask you before we run out of time today, which is, kind of if like what's a question or an approach that maybe you don't feel like gets asked of you enough? Like you see the people who have the various patterns that are not as successful as, your one really outlier on the successful side's example. Like
Mhm.
what are the questions they should be asking themselves, or they should be asking the either Mike Ritzema himself or the Mike in their life?
They totally, anybody who's watching this can find me on LinkedIn and ask me. Like our mission is to help trucking families. So even if you're not a client, I'll still answer your question. But the question they should ask themselves is, what am I tolerating from my driver? As a small trucking, we're talking about for the trucking company,
Yeah, or
even a
even the
small
truck
trucking
driver
company
looking
that's
at it
looking to
too,
hire
right?
drivers, they should ask themselves, what am I tolerating that I shouldn't be tolerating? And then the follow-up question to that is, am I clear to my drivers that that should not be tolerated? And almost every time that second answer is no. Because again,
Right.
I don't think the drivers are bad people at all. Even the drivers who might not be up to whatever standard I can construct. They're not bad people. They just need to be trained up and they need to be held accountable to that standard. And so if you do that, I think that's the big thing. If I were a driver, the question I would ask the trucking company I'd go work for, I should ask the trucking company I'm going to want to go work for. Ask them what their turnover is and ask them why they have turnover. And if their turnover is 100% or more, ask them why. And if their answer is anything that blames the drivers, you want to walk away. You don't want to work for them. If it's, we made bad hires, we weren't as particular as we should have been, or this or that, anything that's on the company side where they kind of take ownership of it, then you might have a home. But if they go, yeah, we hired, those drivers are just crappy. They don't say we hired bad drivers. They go, these drivers were crappy. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
probably not the drivers. So
Right.
yeah,
Right. Yeah. Not
unfortunately,
at
I don't
that
want to.
volume, right?
Yeah, I mean, one driver is one thing, but again, the way they answer the question is, we as a trucking company should have been better. We should have been
Yeah.
more clear on our expectations, and we weren't, and the driver left, or something like that, or we weren't clear about that they were going to have to do this thing. Like we weren't clear that they were going to sometimes haul flatbeds, or they were going to sometimes have to go to New York City, or they were going to have to sometimes drive a slip seat or something. Whatever
Yeah.
the thing is, right? But
Yeah.
if
The
they're like that
friction
was not,
comes from something. It's
yes,
You don't lose
absolutely.
100% of your drivers just because they didn't like purple trucks, right?
Yeah, and you knew did you tell them the trucks were purple before they started?
Yeah.
That kind of
It's
stuff. And I
and
know
yeah.
it's hard in the minute, but as a truck driver, you are also interviewing the company. They're not just interviewing you for a job, you're interviewing them as well. And keep that in mind because you market for a bad trucking company is going to suck the life out of you. Just like having a bad driver at a trucking company sucks the life out of the trucking company. It's both
Yeah.
ways. And so but yeah, I would absolutely do that. And I think that would be helpful to the drivers to make better matches and helpful for the trucking companies too, because they got to look themselves in the mirror and go, you know what, we screwed that up. We were
Yeah,
not
who
as good.
wins from this? The driver
Nobody.
doesn't win, the
You're just going to leave
company,
them in 3 months
everybody.
anyway.
Yeah. Nobody.
So you're just going to finally get eligible for health insurance if they have it, and then you're going to go to the next one. They have to start the waiting period over again.
Yeah, and you get to deal with all the fun of, well, are they going to pay me my full final check? Are they going to hold
Sitting
some back? Are they going
sitting through
to?
orientation, doing another drug test, just a wasted time on all that. I
Yeah,
mean,
for sure.
yeah, it's just so much lost productivity. You could be out making a living.
For sure. Well, Mike,
Yeah,
thank you so much for your time today. You
yeah.
want give a quick shout out to where people can find you.
Truckingpayroll.com is our website. We have all kinds of resources there for you. in our learning center. You can also find me on almost any social at Trucking Payroll, TikTok, LinkedIn, YouTube. I have a podcast called Driven for
Yeah.
Success that I just started. We just launched the 4th episode yesterday. And it's all about back office things for small trucking companies.
Cool. I'll share
So
that
go
out
check
too.
that out. Awesome. Well, thanks, man. Thanks so much for having me. Anytime I can help your people, I'm always excited to do it.
Thank you too, man. Appreciate all you do for the industry.
This has been the Channel 19 Experience. If it's about trucking, we're talking about it. All uncut. The wild stuff, the weird stuff, the mistakes, the memories. But we talk about the world of trucking today, too. Everything from legislation to lane changes in the industry. We got it covered. Thanks for listening to the show. If you enjoyed it, make sure to like, rate, and review. We'll be back at the ranch soon, but in the meantime, hit us up on social media at Channel 19 Experience and the website at www.channel19experience.com. That's channel and the numbers 19. See you down the road.